Today, I want to tell you about something that has stayed with me for years, and I want to be upfront with you. What I'm about to describe is not a ghost story. It's not a legend or an urban myth. This is something that happened to a real school, in a real town, and the people who investigated it came away with more questions than answers. I heard this from a woman named Carol, a retired school teacher who spent 30 years working in the same district where it happened. She wasn't the type to exaggerate. She didn't tell stories for effect. When she told me this, she was calm, measured, and completely serious. She said, "I think about those kids every single day. Every single day." It was a Friday in October, the kind of crisp, golden autumn day that feels like it was designed to be a school field trip. Hartwell Elementary School in rural western Pennsylvania was sending its fourth grade class, 26 children ages 9 and 10, on a day trip to Blackwood State Park. A nature walk, a ranger presentation, lunch by the lake. Standard stuff. The kind of trip every kid remembers for years. The bus was number 4417, a standard yellow school bus, 12 years old but recently inspected and cleared. The driver was a man named Gerald Thorne, 51 years old, 22 years on the job, not a single incident on his record. The chaperone was a teacher's aide named Patricia Webb. 26 kids, 2 adults, 1 bus. They left the school parking lot at 8:14 in the morning. Parents waved from the sidewalk, someone took photos. The bus turned onto Route 9 heading north, and that was the last time anyone saw it. The trip was scheduled to last until 4 p.m. Parents began arriving at the school at 3:45. By 4:30, the bus still hadn't returned. The principal called the park. Blackwood State Park had no record of the bus arriving, no record of the school group. The ranger on duty that day said he hadn't seen a yellow school bus all morning. By 5 p.m., the school called the police. By 6 p.m., the parking lot was full of parents. By 8 p.m., the FBI had been notified. 26 children and 2 adults had simply vanished.
State police launched a search along the entire length of Route 9 and every connecting road between Hartwell and Blackwood Park. Helicopters went up. Volunteers combed the woods on either side of the highway. Roadside diners and gas stations were canvassed. Had anyone seen a school bus? Anyone at all? Almost no one had. Almost. A gas station attendant 14 miles north of the school, a teenager working a Saturday shift, said he thought he remembered a yellow bus going past around 8:30 in the morning. He wasn't certain. He hadn't paid much attention, but he thought it had been going north on Route 9. That matched the expected route. It placed the bus at least 14 miles into the journey, headed in the right direction. It was the last confirmed sighting. After that, nothing. No wreckage, no skid marks, no reports of an accident, no witnesses who'd seen a bus pull off the road, turn around, or stop anywhere. A 40,000-pound vehicle carrying 28 human beings had traveled 14 miles and then ceased to exist. 3 days into the investigation, the FBI's field office in Pittsburgh took over the case. 2 lead agents were assigned. I'll call them Agent Reyes and Agent Dunmore because Carol only remembered their last names and I can't verify the rest. What they found in the first week fell into 2 categories: things that made no sense and things that were actively disturbing. Every adult on that bus, Patricia Webb and Gerald Thorne, carried a cell phone. In 2009, when this happened, most 4th graders didn't have their own phones, but several of the children did. Investigators were able to pull the cell tower records for every device. Gerald Thorne's phone pinged a tower near the school at 8:09 a.m., consistent with leaving the parking lot. It pinged the same tower cluster at 8:31. Then it pinged a tower 11 miles north of the school, just off Route 9. At 8:44 a.m., it stopped pinging entirely. No handoff to another tower, no roaming signal, no power-off event registered by the carrier. The phone simply stopped communicating with any tower on the network, as if it had ceased to exist. Patricia Webb's phone showed the same pattern, same last ping at 8:44 a.m. Same abrupt disappearance from the network. The children's phones, 3 of them, showed identical results. All 5 devices, simultaneously at 8:44 a.m., went dark. The agents mapped the location of that last tower. It corresponded to a stretch of Route 9 about 11 miles north of Hartwell, the 2-lane road through dense forest, no exits, no intersections, no turnoffs for another 4 miles in either direction. They searched that stretch of road for 3 days. They found nothing.
Route 9 had traffic monitoring cameras at 2 points. One at the edge of town, one at an intersection 18 miles north where the highway crossed a state road. The camera at the edge of town captured bus 4417 at 8:19 a.m. heading north. Clear footage, readable plate number. Confirmed. The camera 18 miles north, the bus never appeared. Investigators checked the footage repeatedly. The bus was on the road. The bus never reached that camera. Somewhere in those 7 miles between 11 and 18 miles north of Hartwell, bus 4417 left Route 9. The problem, there was nowhere for it to go. Satellite imagery of that corridor, pulled and analyzed by the FBI, showed unbroken forest on both sides of the road for that entire stretch. No driveways, no logging roads, no clearings large enough to hide a school bus. One narrow gravel track appeared on the imagery branching off the highway about 13 miles out, but it was barely wide enough for a single car, blocked by a locked forestry gate, and the ground around it showed no signs of recent disturbance. They searched it anyway. The track ran about a quarter mile into the woods and ended at an old, empty equipment shed. Nothing inside but rusted tools and dead leaves. While the search continued, investigators ran deep background checks on both adults. Patricia Webb came back clean in every direction. Gerald Thorne's file, however, surfaced one detail that hadn't appeared in his employment record. 7 years before the disappearance, Thorne had been briefly investigated and quickly cleared in connection with a missing persons case in Ohio. A different state, a different job, a different context. He had been a tangential witness, not a suspect, and the case had been resolved without charges. But the investigators noted it. They flagged it. They tried to find Gerald Thorne's family to ask questions. Gerald Thorne had no family, no next of kin listed anywhere. His apartment, searched with a warrant, was almost entirely bare. A mattress, a folding chair, a single shelf of books, all on one subject: rural Pennsylvania geography. Trail maps, county surveys, topographic charts going back decades. Agent Reyes reportedly said after seeing the apartment that it felt less like a place someone lived and more like a place someone prepared. Carol had been following the case since the beginning. The whole community had. But she told me there was one detail that never made it into the newspapers. One thing she knew because her neighbor's son worked dispatch for the county sheriff's office. At 8:46 a.m. on the morning the bus disappeared, 2 minutes after every phone on board went silent, the county dispatch center received a call. It came from a landline, a payphone as it turned out, at a rest stop 8 miles east of Route 9, in the opposite direction from the park. The call lasted 11 seconds. The dispatcher on duty picked up and heard nothing but static, and underneath it, what she later described as, quote, a sound like children singing very far away. Then the line went dead. The rest stop where the payphone was located was 23 miles from the last known position of the bus. In 11 minutes, the gap between the last cell tower ping and the call, it was physically impossible for the bus to have reached that rest stop. The payphone was dusted for prints. Hundreds of prints were found. It was a public phone. None matched Gerald Thorne, none matched Patricia Webb, none matched anyone connected to the school.
The case was never closed. Bus 4417, Gerald Thorne, Patricia Webb, and 26 children from Hartwell Elementary School were never found. Not one piece of physical evidence, not a shoe, not a backpack, not a scrap of yellow paint was ever recovered from those woods or anywhere else. The FBI case file runs to over 400 pages. Carol told me she'd read a partial summary that leaked online years later. She said most of it was standard investigative procedure: interviews, forensic reports, geographic analysis. But near the end of the summary, there was a single handwritten note in the margin of one page. She didn't know which agent wrote it. It said, Route 9, Mile 13. The trees were wrong. No one ever explained what that meant. The note was not referenced anywhere else in the file. When journalists filed FOIA requests for the full document, that page came back almost entirely redacted. The family still hold a vigil every year in October. 26 candles on the steps of Hartwell Elementary. The school never sent another class on a field trip. And Route 9, Mile 13? Carol told me locals don't drive that stretch after dark. They don't talk about why. They just don't. That's the story as Carol told it to me. I don't know what happened to those children. I don't know what Gerald Thorne was or what he knew or where he took them. I don't know what the trees looked like at Mile 13 that was worth writing down. But I think about that dispatcher, sitting at her console at 8:46 in the morning, picking up a call from a payphone that was 23 miles away, and hearing, underneath the static, children singing. I wonder what song it was. Subscribe, leave a comment, and maybe take a different road home tonight.